Morrie's Mazda is here today with the new 2016 CX-3, and we also got our hands on the 2016 HR-V. What I'd like to do is show you around both vehicles and then provide you with a driving review. So now in the back seat of the HR-V, it is going to be a little bit smaller than the CR-V, but it's going to give you a lot of space. I mean, I'm 6'1" and I have plenty of headroom. I have knee space here. This is where I was comfortably driving the car. And it's also a reclining rear seat, which I really like. Kind of a rare feature in some of the smaller crossovers, but it is a lot more comfortable. Also, as far as storage goes, you do have enough space for what you're going to be using the car, hopefully about 95% of the time. If you do a little more hauling, or you want to throw the kids in and all their hockey bags or soccer balls or whatever else you're hauling around, you might want to consider the CR-V, but for now I think the HR-V has a ton of space. So now one thing that's really nice with the HR-V is the keyless entry system. So with this, basically when it's negative 10 degrees in Minnesota, you'll just walk up to the car, keep your gloves on, and the door will open for you. All right, so now let's take the HR-V for a little spin around. So there's a lot of vehicles in this class that compete with the smaller crossovers. You could be looking at any number of different options, whether you're looking for one of the import vehicles or maybe a Ford or something else that kind of fits your fancy, whether that's front wheel drive, all wheel drive. There's so many different options and they're all going to be pretty similar. One thing I like about the HR-V is that even with the all-wheel drive, you're going to get 32 miles per gallon. There's this nice little econ button over here, so you can click that and that's going to help you get the best possible fuel economy. Other things that are nice, the seats are really comfortable. Some of these smaller crossovers, I know Ford has a really hard seat in there, and some of the other ones can be a little bit, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but not quite as comfortable as this one when you're on a longer road trip. Things that are nice, this does have heated seats as well. So you get the leather with the heat, which is just great if you are cruising for a while. I know I've spent a little time behind the wheel of this, and I've started to like it. Honda's always had the reputation of building cars that are gonna last, and this can be no exception to that. Now you have navigation with this model. You can click audio and have your music powered through there, whether that's through Bluetooth, or there's this cool little auxiliary input down here, and also an HDMI cable. A few other things that are nice, the steering wheel, all the buttons on there are very easy to use, and there's not a lot of confusion when it's to be had with some of the other cars I know in this segment. There's just so many different features and options and all this stuff, you kind of get lost. But if you spend 5 minutes in this car, you know how to turn down the heat and air, you know where the heated seats are, you can just get in and drive. And that's really kind of what it comes down to. So I know I mentioned before, if you are looking for a little more space, the CR-V is probably the better option, but you don't sacrifice a lot. I was surprised when I popped the hatch. There is a good amount of room compared to other vehicles in its class again. But one of the other things I know that's pretty neat about this car is not only the reputation for reliability, but that you can put 4 or 5 adults in this car and still be comfortable on a road trip. So now we'll see. It's got good kind of get up and go to it. It does have the CVT transmission. So if that's not something you're used to, basically what that is, it's continually gonna feel like it's in one gear is the easiest way to explain it. I know there's kind of gripes about if people like it or not. I don't so much. If that was kind of the one complaint I had about this, I'd like just the classic 6-speed manual, which I believe is an option in this car. And that might be on the lower package levels, but also a 6-speed automatic wouldn't be the end of the world in my mind. Again, not a bad thing. I'm sure once you get used to it, it's fine and it's easy to use, but just kind of one little point I've made. So the blinker is really cool. If we come to a stop, you're gonna notice that the camera on the right side of the car is gonna show you sort of that cross traffic on your blind spot. So that's gonna help you, again, kind of remain with the top of the class safety features of this car. It's something you don't absolutely have to have, but I don't think there's any sort of bad thing when it comes to too many safety features. Whether that's your blind spot detection or the mirrors on this car, which are quite large, which I really like because you can see very easily. There's a lot of kind of nice things that bring the HR-V together as a package. So who should be looking at this car? Maybe if you don't need a ton of hauling space, if you want a crossover that's all-wheel drive that's going to get you through the snow or the inclement weather, but is still going to provide you with almost sedan-like fuel economy, the HR-V is certainly an option to look at. So now that we've driven the Honda HR-V, let's take a look at the Mazda CX-3. So this is a newer model from Mazda, which is going to fall just below the CX-5. It's still a fun car to drive in classic Mazda fashion. You're going to have a smaller 4-cylinder engine, which is going to have plenty of get up and go. You got to figure 90% of the time, how are you using the car? And this has more than enough to get you going into traffic, or you can kick on sport mode and get going that way. With just over 140 horsepower, it's also in its all-wheel drive form going to get you around low 30s, probably about 32 miles per gallon on the highway, which is amazing fuel economy. Now, space inside is a little bit limited, so you might want to look at the CX-5 if you're doing a little bit more hauling. So now where the HR-V had a lot more legroom, the little tiny CX-3 does have more headroom. Now, it's a sportier car, you are going to have more fun driving this in the HR-V, but for everyday use, you do sacrifice a little bit of room in the back seat. You're also going to give up a little bit more cargo space compared to the HR-V, but when you see how the ride and drive is and the features in this car, you might want to go a different direction. So just like the HR-V, the Mazda CX-3 also has a keyless entry system. Simply walk up to the car, tap the little button, and you're good to go. All right, so now we're behind the wheel of the CX-3, so let's go for a little spin around. So this is the Grand Touring, which is going to be the top model, so you're going to get all the equipment in this one. You're going to get a ton of safety features, you're going to get a ton of the extra stuff, which is certainly nice to have, but not something that you absolutely have to have. The thing with the CX-3 is that it's small. You have to be prepared to think, again, how do you spend most of your time in the car? Is it going to be just you in the car? Are you sitting in stop and go traffic? Are you going to be on the highway a lot? And that's the thing with the CX-3. If you need more space, just go up to the CX-5. But if maybe it's just you, or maybe you don't need a ton of hauling space, the CX-3 is perfect because you're going to get about 32 miles per gallon on the highway and you get a really fun drive. Not only that, but the infotainment system here is all controlled through the center console, or when you're stopped, it's a touch screen there, and there's a separate volume knob. You can have your Bluetooth streaming. There's so many different little features in this car is really what sets the CX-3 apart. And how the interior looks. It looks so good in here. You have this kind of carbon fiber weave, you have the red leather with the black. There's a few different interior options, but this is exactly how I would spec my CX-3. You would get black on the outside, do the nice black with the red inside. It looks cool. The seats are extremely comfortable in here, and they're heated as well. So you do have kind of the suede as well as the leather, so they're gonna get nice and toasty in the wintertime, and in Minnesota, you're definitely gonna want that. But I mean, as far as the overall ride and drive is concerned, I mean, there is a sport mode, so you can put that on, and then you'll notice it'll hold the RPMs a little bit higher. You do sacrifice fuel economy, but you get plenty of get up and go that way, and it's more than enough than most people would need for just kind of the daily commute. But then you kick it off, again, 32 miles per gallon on a highway out of a small crossover with all-wheel drive. That is awesome. This one does have the heads-up display, which is really cool. So it's going to give you your speed readout. Then the center, kind of the gauges here and everything, you have, I mean, easy to read. There's nothing confusing. The fuel gauge is straightforward. Some cars try and hide all that information from you. This is not one of them. It's going to give you the outside temperature, which is something I always like to have. And then from there, I mean, everything else is controlled right through the infotainment. The big differences between the HR-V and the CX-3 is this is going to be a little bit more fun to drive. It's going to be a little bit, I guess, nicer inside in my mind. I didn't see any problems with the HR-V, but the CX-3 is cool. I mean, you get in this car and it looks good. With the red stitching and that red leather, again, the carbon fiber, plugging your phone in is right here. It's really easy. Everything is straightforward and fun. The HR-V is maybe a little bit more of a practicality-based vehicle because you do have a little more room in the back. You are going to have a little more space for passengers, but you sacrifice rather that kind of fun factor that you get with the CX-3. I think the styling's a little better on this car, but then again, you get more room with the HR-V, so it's kind of a toss-up. What are you looking for out of a car? So between the HR-V and the CX-3, I mean, they're both great choices in the crossover or subcompact market. This one's a little more fun to drive. That one's got a little bit more space, is kind of the big two to me. But you know, I like the style of this. That one's not a bad looking car either, but I prefer this one a little bit more. Again, it comes down to what you're looking for, and I don't think there's a wrong choice there. On behalf of the Morrie's Automotive Group, thank you for watching. Now, if you'd like to schedule your test drive in the all-new CX-3, make sure to call, click, or stop by any one of our 3 locations. Thanks again for watching, and make sure you buy happy.